Very much, everyone. Please welcome Martin Carnoy. As Martin makes his way down, I hope you also enjoyed the Flower for Purpose cookies that we gave out at the door. Please check them out. We're glad to have him here tonight. Martin, thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing your family's story. Let me make sure that's on. It is. Give it a try. You're on.
Thank you. I think it's working, yeah.
Let me start by asking you, why did you want the story to be a movie? I think the cards at the end tell it a little bit, but I'd like to dig in a little deeper.
I don't think we ever intended to make this movie, but what we wanted to do for the family is that we took this trip from Warsaw to try to reenact, or at least follow the route that we tried to take. I was interested in it myself, particularly since I had all these letters from the family who had stayed behind to my parents, and they had addresses. Their addresses in Lviv. There was no danger in sending addresses from Lviv. The Soviets weren't particularly censoring letters, I don't think. So I wanted to see those places, and we took the trip. We traveled that way. So that was the original idea, just to do the family film about that. And then my son arranged for me to do this interview in Paris with a cameraman, and he and his partner Horlick came up with this movie. So I think it just sort of happened.
And what is the goal of the movie? What is your hope by making this movie?
Well, originally it was just for the family, but when we saw the movie and people started watching the movie, they liked it in terms that it represented maybe more than just something for the family, that there were some interesting, as the film says at the end, these stories are important. There are, of course, hundreds of thousands of them, and they all deserve to be told. So I think the lesson that I hope that people get from this film is that the main problem for my family was that my father couldn't get them out. He got out because of his connections with Colgate-Palmolive. And even then, we weren't supposed to stay in the United States. We were supposed to go to Cuba. But the Polish quota ran out in 1940. Nobody could get from Poland, so we went out to Canada and came back in on a permanent visa. But this Evian conference that occurred, I believe, in 1938 at Evian, with 32 countries, Roosevelt called a meeting to try to get these countries to agree to take Jews from Germany, at that time, just from Germany. And nobody would do it. I think Dominican Republic agreed to take a few Jews. And I think Hitler saw that, saw the result of that meeting and realized nobody cared about the Jews. And the U.S. also played a really terrible role. It isn't mentioned in the film, but my father's brother in Warsaw in 1940 and even in 41, before we entered the war, the U.S. entered the war, he had an appointment at the U.S. consulate, or had got on the list for an appointment. But the Americans were not issuing visas to anybody. The State Department wasn't giving visas. So the lesson is, that I think, is that we have to be very sensitive. And I think, in fact, I think a lot of countries have learned this lesson, we have to be sensitive to the fact that people are being killed in many countries and politically in trouble. And we should be more welcoming. These are all human beings. Just because they don't look like us or they have different religions or whatever, it doesn't mean that they're not our fellow human beings, and we should be open to bringing them and giving them asylum.
Thank you. I think it's very true. I think learning from telling the stories of the Holocaust are important, but when they have relevance to today, and this one definitely does, and most of them I believe do, that makes them even more important and a good reason to to learn from our history a little bit. I want to ask a little bit just about you personally. You don't remember any of this from the film, right?
Well, I claim to remember. I claim to remember coming over on the ship that I had a little sailor hat, and the wind came and blew it into the ocean. This was on the trip over from Petsamo, from Finland to the United States. So I imagined that but maybe I was just told this story, but I doubt that I remember.
So this all really came from your parents sharing these stories with you,
right?
And you sharing them with your children. And that's also
my parents were particularly. Many families don't talk about this at all. They really. I've talked to a lot of children of Holocaust survivors, and many of them know almost nothing about their parents' experiences. I had a friend in Paris, he's not alive anymore, who was picked up off the street in Paris when he was 17 years old and sent to Auschwitz. And he wouldn't talk about it until when he was in his early 70s. He talked about it. He wrote a book, a fabulous book about it. But my family was pretty open about it. There's some stuff that they didn't tell me, which I'm sorry that I didn't press them on. But for the most part, I'm able to tell a lot of these stories. It's really important for me to have that because it has real meaning for me. It certainly affected my life. What I said in the film is completely correct, that I feel survivor's guilt, even though I was never, in my memory, I don't remember any of it. And relatively, I am reluctant to even call myself a Holocaust survivor because, after all, I wasn't ever in hiding or in a camp. But I do feel that I carry a tremendous amount of guilt through my parents of what happened to my family. And I tell my grandchildren that I never really knew my grandparents. I never had any grandparents. I had no uncles and aunts. I grew up with my parents, and that was it. So I said, Lisa knows this, I have put a tremendous value on family because I never, except for my parents, didn't have any.
Thank you for sharing this. Thank you to your parents for bringing this from generation to generation, passing the guilt on too, but that's part of it. I'll ask one more question, then we'll open it to questions from the audience, if you have any. Where does this go? How are people going to see this, hear this story and see this film?
Where can they see it?
Where can they see it? Where is it going to go?
Well, it is private. It is private on a private account on YouTube. I think I had to guarantee Juliet that we would make it private. Anyway, my son is very interested, and his film partner, is very interested in showing this at various festivals, and it seems to be getting some reaction. We showed it in Poland at a festival just now at the end of June, and it was really had a great reaction. Lisa and my granddaughter Katie were there. Had a very good reaction there, and we'll probably try to show it more in Poland. The Poles need to see this stuff too. They're very forgetful about many of the things that happen.
Possibly. We'd love to take questions from the audience. We're going to pass a microphone around.
So I'm going to ask something that most of the people in the audience are going to think it's crazy. But let's just say that we are living now in a time which is following the playbook of the Nazis. How would you protect yourself, knowing what you know? Would you have money outside of the country? Would you leave? What would be your advice, given your perspective?
This is a hypothetical, I assume.
You're going to take three at a time, or you want to take one at a time?
Let's take one at a time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm a little bit more optimistic than that, but I would be alert. I think that it's a different time. It is a completely different time. And I'll tell you the main difference. The main difference is that we're bombarded with information about what is happening. I try to imagine what it would have been like in 1939, 40, 41, 42, if we had the kind of instant information that we have today about what's going on. People taking films, posting films, posting pictures, posting stuff. All of this would have been known to the world. There would have been nothing hidden. One of the reasons that all this could have happened in the immensity that it happened was that people did not believe that it was happening, even though emissaries were coming, as you know, to the United States and to London and telling everybody that this was happening. Today, that's not possible. It doesn't mean that we can't have authoritarian. We do. We see it in the streets now, ICE people running around arresting people almost randomly. So I think it's good to be alert, but on the other hand, I think the conditions are very different. I don't know where it's going to be headed, but it could be bad. As far as, well, I took the trouble. It took me 8 years to get a Polish passport. all my kids and all my grandkids have Polish passports. The last one, who's only 9 months old, is getting his passport in the mail in 2 weeks. So
Learn to play poker too. It seems to be helpful at times, and to talk to people.
I think it's very important not to underestimate authoritarianism and work in head. It's a different time, but it's still real.
We had another question.
I was very impressed with the pictures, the black and white pictures. I'm just curious, how many of those pictures were from your album and that you had from personally, as opposed to the other pictures that may have been of the time? I felt that part of the movie was very well done and gave it a quality that I think really made a big difference.
I think about 20% of the pictures were from my parents' collection. I was pretty amazed at how much stuff they got out. As I said, my mother even took her wedding dress, which I didn't realize until after she died, but I found it in the drawer. But they did take quite a few pictures. People didn't take that many pictures in those times. So, for example, I have no picture of my mother's brother. My mother had a brother who died in the Holocaust. I have evidence that he existed from the letters that were sent back, but I have no picture of him. I might have a picture of my great-grandparents, but I'm not sure it's them. But about 20% of the pictures in the movie were real pictures of family and places. And of course, the film we took, we went to see my mother's grandparent, where my mother's father grew up in this tiny town of Magnuszów, about 80 kilometers southeast of Warsaw. It's a very small place, I went to the church there and talked to the priest, and I asked them if there were any Jewish cemetery. But it turns out that there was a major battle between the Germans. It's right on the Vistula River, and the Soviet army attempted to cross there, and so there was a major battle. So the town was basically obliterated in that battle. But we have the current, like the pictures of the house, but a lot of those were stock pictures that they used.
Very good. Very well.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One, I think we saw a picture of a gravestone that looked like it was very well preserved. Was it preserved, or did you have it cleaned up? And what was
the one that I was standing next to?
Yes.
In the Warsaw Cemetery?
Yes.
That's my great-grandmother's gravestone. It's very near. If anybody visits the Warsaw Jewish Cemetery, which amazingly was not destroyed by the Germans, her tomb, she died in 1922, I think. Her tomb is right near the front of the cemetery. I found four of my father's brother, who died of tuberculosis, has a big monument there, and my mother's father is buried there, and two great-grandmothers, one on my mother's side, one on my father's side.
So somebody is preserving the cemetery?
Yes, it's a hodgepodge, but it is. There are 120,000 people buried there. There are 120,000 people, and I think they have cataloged, digitalized, the names of close to 100,000. I found these names on their register.
I see one more question up there.
Can you tell me what the name of the town was that your family went from to go to Warsaw? You said Kalisz? Was it Kalisz?
Kalisz. Where my father was from?
Yeah.
It's the town of Kalisz. It's one of the oldest cities in Poland. It's west of Łódź. It's a small town. It's I think even today probably has only 50,000 people.
Yeah.
At the time my parents lived there, it was about in the high 30s, thousands.
Was it near Stanislav?
Excuse me?
Was it near Stanislav or Lvov?
No, completely on the other side of Poland. This is way western Poland. This was, at the time, in 1914, it was the border between German Poland and Russian Poland. It was 3 kilometers into Russian Poland. So it's way in the west. Now it's central Poland because Silesia is to the west.
Do you know how to spell Kalisz?
Kalisz, Kalisz. And it's a very interesting place. It's perfectly preserved. It was destroyed during the First World War, but in the second, it was rebuilt by mid-1920s, and it wasn't touched by World War II, and it had about a third of the population before the war was Jewish. It had a very long history It was on the route from Rome to the Baltic, what was called the amber route. The Romans would gather amber in the Baltic Sea and bring it back and sell it. So it was a town. And there's actually a coin from the 12th century that you can find in the catalog. I tried to buy it, but it's very hard to get, with Hebrew letters on it, because the Jews were brought in the 12th century to Poland to be basically the treasurers and mint coins and lend money, of course, to the aristocrats.
Let's take one more up there. Thank you.
Hi, what was your reception like as you went through these small towns in Poland? How were you received by the Polish people?
Well, I speak Polish. My parents were totally assimilated. They did not speak Yiddish. My grandparents spoke Yiddish, but my parents did not speak. They might have known a few words, but so I grew up speaking Polish, and so how am I received by the Polish people? Well, there are really two Polands, like there are two Americas, and there's a liberal Poland and there's a very conservative Poland, and it's very evenly divided. So there's a strange kind of anti-Semitism in Poland among part of the population, and there is, on the other hand, a large group of people who actually miss the Jews and are sorry that there are not more Jews living in Poland. But so I try to hang out with the people that like Jews, and and I have many friends there. In fact, we just spent. My wife and I just were in France with some Polish friends. He's a senator, actually. And I don't know if you know this, but the foreign minister of Poland, Radek Sikorski, is married to Anne Applebaum, who writes for The Atlantic. And she spends about half her time in Poland. So it's a strange situation, but when we did this film in Torun, which is a beautiful city between Warsaw and the Baltic and Gdańsk, about the same number of people came that are here, and they were just really, we were warmly received, and they asked me some very difficult questions about my Polish identity and things like that, and I think, I mean, there are a lot of Jews that don't like my position on this. I had this friend who was sent to Auschwitz, who was born in Germany originally, and considered the Poles as the worse than the Germans in terms of what happened in Poland during the war, which I think is a ridiculous position, but there are many Jews who are very, very anti-Polish, and I think they have a lot of good reasons for that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but on the other hand, I think we also have to recognize that a lot of Jews were saved during the war by Poles. There was a minority, but you have to ask yourself, what would happen in this country if all of a sudden there were attempts to kill all the black people or all Hispanic people? How many of us would, on a penalty of death, would be willing to hide these people in our homes and make provision for them? Anyway, it's a very complicated issue, but I think it's worth thinking about.
I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for sharing your story, and I want to thank you for inspiring others to tell their story. I think this is so important.
Thank you very
so
much for
Thank you all for joining us.